I'm in Westlands, Nairobi, in Kenya, and right now I'm leaving my Airbnb rental. Nairobi's a good place for Airbnb because the hotels seem quite overpriced, and you get a good selection. I've stayed in Airbnbs. I've been to Nairobi maybe 4 times. I've stayed in Airbnbs each time, and I like this one because the location was very convenient to downtown area. One problem with Nairobi is the traffic. You can get in some epic traffic jams, so it's not a good idea to be staying in the suburbs if you want to be going downtown every day. Regarding the places I stayed in 2 separate apartments in Nairobi. One was in a more posh area right next to the West End Hotel, and the apartment was small but very comfortable. When I first got to Nairobi, it was very cold, and you actually needed a space heater and a light winter jacket to get around. So I was there for a few days, maybe a week or so, and in this one you see here in this video, it's a situation where it was kind of a last minute rental, and the building is not nice on the outside, but the actual apartment itself was colorful and comfortable, and everything was fine. One of the reasons I'm in Nairobi, actually I spent 2 months in Kenya. I was in Nairobi, Diani Beach, and Mombasa. And my main reason for being in Nairobi for a few days is, believe it or not, I was going to a dentist. In Canada, we have free healthcare, but dental is not free. So before I left, I looked at a couple of dentists in Canada, and they were very expensive. So I said, hey, let me give it a shot. So I looked up a dentist on the internet in Nairobi, and I found a guy who's the dentist for his dental office works with the American Embassy and the British Embassy. And so I said, I'll make an appointment, and I was glad I did. This guy, I'd say maybe 50, in his mid-50s. He knew everything. He was just a very good dentist. You can tell just by talking to him. He knew everything about dentistry. And I had a couple appointments. The total cost was, for all my work, was about $270. I think if I had it done in Canada, it would have probably cost at least $450, maybe $500. So I saved a couple $100 on my trip. Nairobi is not really a tourist destination. It's more a place of business. So during the day, there's not really a lot to do. They have a lot of malls here, especially in this Westlands area where I am. They have the Sarit Center, which is kind of like an older mall. It's actually my favorite because it's big, has a lot of little shops, and it's a very kind of local mall. You have a lot of local flavor there, as opposed to the Westgate Mall. And I'm sure you recognize that name from the tragedy that happened a few years back. Anyway, they rebuilt it, and I don't know. I just Westgate Mall just reminds me of malls I can go to Canada. I mean, I'm not going to travel halfway across the world to go to malls that look just like the ones in Canada. So it's just kind of dull there. Not a lot of people, but they did have a very good cafe, which I spent some time in. They have a great cafe with a wonderful breakfast, and they did have a bistro that I went to one time, which is pretty nice. So during my time, basically during the day, what I do is go to a cafe. They have one thing that I love about Kenya is they have a lot of great cafes, like big cafes, where you can sit and do some work. I have an online business, so I had to spend several hours a day answering emails and doing some marketing things and things like that. So I'd go to one of the cafes either in Westgate or Sarit Center. I'd usually just walk there because I was staying very close to those malls. And I'd go to a restaurant for lunch or dinner. The nightlife in Nairobi is amazing. Pretty much every day of the week, there's a club that's really good there. Like I was saying, though, Nairobi's not a tourist destination. One thing they do have in Kenya is a lot of times if you have a really nice hotel with a nice swimming pool, what you can do is you can just pay just to use the swimming pool for the day, okay? And so you can go to a nice, a 4 or 5 star hotel and just stay at the swimming pool for a couple hours. I've been to Nairobi, like I said, maybe 4 times since 2014. One thing I noticed this trip is a lot of new construction going on, and a lot of the construction seemed to be impressive, large high rises. I think some were office buildings, some were condos, and just a lot going on, a lot of construction sites. Yeah, let me give you a couple tips about the airport, the Nairobi airport. Actually, there's 2 airports in Nairobi. There's one called Wilson, and there's another one called, I believe, Kenyatta. Yeah, Kenyatta Airport, which is the main one for international arrivals. I was quite surprised this time because there's in the Nairobi Airport NBO there is a space now reserved for Uber. So when you arrive at Nairobi, the international arrivals, if you just take a right and walk up the road, you'll see a space in the parking lot reserved for Uber cars. So you could just call an Uber and go where you want. Now this depends on airport. There's a lot of airports in Kenya. Mombasa Airport's the exact opposite. They hate Uber there. As a matter of fact, I took an Uber to catch a flight there, and we were stopped by the police right outside the airport, and the guy was, for some reason, they don't like pay per hire cars there, and what happened was they allowed the Uber driver to drop me off at the departure, thank God, but they told him to come back, and I'm sure when he came back, they asked him for a little bit of money. And the third airport I've been to is Ukunda, which is basically Diani Beach. And that's a great airport. It's a tiny little airport. You can even take a tuk-tuk or a moto to get there. And you just go through one little security and you're there. The airport's tiny. It's a lot of bus stations are bigger than this place. But it's a great way to get around. Air travel in Kenya is very cheap. There's a bunch of airlines like Fly 540, Kenya Air, another one called Sax, and there's even more. I can't even remember the name of some of them. But to get to places, for example, Zanzibar, you can go to Zanzibar, which is in Tanzania. You can go to Kisumu, Malindi, and the prices are very good, depending on when you want to leave. It can be as cheap as $40. For example, it cost me $40 to go from Ukunda to Nairobi. So this area here is Westlands, and there's many nightclubs here. This is where you come for nightlife. There's a club that's, I guess you'd call infamous, kind of a sleazy nightclub called Black Diamond, which is a fun place to go sometimes. And there's another one called The Alchemist, which I heard was nice. I've never been there. There's also Hypnotico. You'll see a sign for that somewhere on this street. And there's a couple other clubs. Well, I think one's called Gypsies. And the most popular one is at the top of the Fortis Towers on this road. And it's called Brew. And you have to get there before 10 o'clock on, let's say, a Saturday night. By 10:30, it's completely full.